right, we're here with Pastor Simon from Northlight Four Square Church here in Whitehorse, Yukon Territory, and we're going to be talking to Simon about church revitalization. But let's hear a little bit more. Who are you? How long you been pastor in Whitehorse? A little bit about you and your journey.
Yeah, so I've been here in Whitehorse I've been here almost 9 years now. We moved from the UK. My wife Zoe and I moved from the UK. So yeah, about 9 years ago. We've been in Canada a little bit before that. So I started here at the church as an associate pastor. I did that for probably about 5 years,
Okay.
something like that. And then transitioned to senior pastor about 4 years ago.
Cool.
So that's about it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So we're talking about revitalizing. Obviously, there was kind of a long-term pastor. You're kind of coming on.
Yeah.
Anytime you have pastoral change, there's changes.
Yeah.
Our culture's changing, becoming a post-Christian. We're kind of in a post-Christian society, and so
sure.
how we facilitate church changes.
Yeah.
Why do you think revitalization is important for the church in this country, in Canada, at this time in history? Why do you think it's important?
Yeah, I think it's about, well, for me, that word is kind of an important word because of the idea that like vitality or revitalizing is really about life. And I just feel like we just need churches that are alive. We need churches that know their mission, their purpose, their calling, that there's real, faith in Jesus happening, like in those communities. We need churches that are not just stuck in some rut of kind of how they've done things for years and years and years. And it's not that tradition is necessarily a bad thing, but it's about staying alive, basically, with our faith and with who we are. And yeah, that's kind of why I feel it's important. I think this world needs to hear a gospel message that has life, because that's exactly what Jesus said. So
yeah, and the church in Canada, there's lots of stats out there that show the evangelical church, Christian church overall, is kind of on a decline in Canada. So bringing life back into the church is definitely necessary.
Yeah.
What's the most difficult revitalization challenge that you've faced?
Yeah, I think there's a couple.
Okay.
I think, first of all, that any kind of change is sometimes difficult for people.
Yeah, absolutely.
We, for whatever reason, we get comfortable. We get, just again, like we get sort of like used to certain cultures of the way. I really believe every church has a culture, and there's certain things in that culture that are very kind of people hold on to those things because they're so entrenched in kind of who they believe they are. And sometimes it's really difficult for people to let go of that stuff because there's things that connect them to those kind of like long-held traditions or long-held ways of being or thinking.
Yeah.
And really, oftentimes those things aren't necessarily completely kind of tied in with what Scripture teaches us about what church should be. Or who Jesus is. Like, it's just that there's a separate whole thing about what our church culture is, and sometimes that culture of church doesn't always reflect what scripturally kind of we see church should be. And so I think one of the big difficult things for people is letting go of what we're comfortable with in order to kind of like either get back to or forward to what Scripture teaches us about what we should be as Christians, or like what church should be like. And I think that's one big challenge. And I think the other challenge for me personally is that in the midst of that change, our church culture, for example, is really good at valuing like the spontaneous and the new. But it's not always really good at following through on that.
Okay.
It can get excited about something different, but then actually when you need to put the work in to see that happen, there can be a lack of kind of like energy behind that.
Yeah.
We can get very excited, but we don't have the kind of like the guts to live it out and walk it out.
Yeah, the follow through of the new fresh idea.
Yeah, so kind of like my challenge in that is to actually not just cast vision or kind of teach what things should be like, but also figure out how do we motivate people and energize people towards that change. So.
Yeah, sometimes so reminding people too, like, why are we doing this? Both on the back end, kind of like, why are we still doing this maybe traditional thing? Not that tradition's bad, but is it lost some meaning?
Yeah.
Is it, we don't even know why we're doing this anymore,
Exactly.
but then on the front end, that's on the back end, on the front end, you bring something new. And again, we still have to remind people, okay, why did we start this new project? Why, and whether it be something the church has done for a long time or something the church has done for new, if it's not have a gospel focus, we're kind of sunk either way. It'll just fail for sure.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the challenges. So what's the most rewarding component of revitalization? Walking through a journey of rethinking as a church, okay, why are we doing this stuff? Is this the best way we can reach our city and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Some of the breakthroughs or some of the exciting and rewarding components, what are those?
I think I'd point to a couple of things. I think one of the there's almost like an inside reward and there's an outside reward.
Okay.
Recently there's been people who've either non-believers or unchurched, kind of like people who've come into our community, our congregation, and have been really impacted by that very word, life. Like they've been shocked almost, like that they've come into this community expecting something different and finding something that they can connect to, finding something that inspires them, excites them, encourages them. They felt welcome, they felt loved, they felt like there was life. And that's a huge, that is what we do it for. So when those things happen, and obviously we want that to happen every Sunday or every week, right? But that's not always the case. But when those things happen, then that's really makes it all worth it. I think the other interesting, good thing or kind of exciting thing is when, there's oh yeah,
sorry about that.
There's people in our kind of churches and communities who are on these different kind of places in terms of change.
Yeah.
Some people adopt it really easily. Some people find it really hard. I find it really rewarding when those people who find it really hard or are resistant, all of a sudden the light goes on.
Yeah.
Or we've done something and then they look back and realize, there was a reason why we did that. I find it really rewarding when those people, just for themselves, really kind of understand afresh that, this is actually something that Jesus really wants us to do.
Yeah.
There's value in it. God's really in it. Yeah. And it's not that they need to realize they were wrong. It's not about that. It's not about right or wrong, but it's just for them realizing,
took a bit more time.
Yeah, there's just something about, there's an awakening that comes to them.
Yeah.
This
really was important.
Yeah.
This was a valuable thing.
Yeah, I think that's really exciting when that happens. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Last little kind of sub question. Both of us have kind of been in a revitalization journey in our churches, and a component of both of our revitalization stories is the church being renamed, the church getting a new name. So, I know kind of our story and stuff like that. You guys, this church was Yukon Bible Fellowship, and recently renamed to Northlight Four Square Church.
Yeah.
You were always a Four Square Church, but there's talk to me a little bit about that transition and why that was important in kind of sparking new life in the church.
Yeah, I think there was a number of different factors that went into a decision like that, and honestly it took a number of years for us to really fully commit to doing it. If I could sum it up in a nutshell, I just felt like our church had changed over the course of time since the founding pastors. The reason why that name was chosen by the founding pastors had a certain cultural context. We're here decades later, and I felt like our name didn't really reflect kind of who we needed to be, or who we were, or who we are. And I felt like we needed to name ourselves something that actually ties into our mission and our values and our vision. And so
the kind of current vision that you're trying to achieve.
And and an interesting thing as well is actually our new name kind of actually probably better describes the mission, vision and values of the founding church, the founding pastors. So that's also a funny
When
thing.
was this church founded? What year?
Oh my gosh, I don't know. It's back in the in the 50s.
In the 50s, okay.
But some of the kind of like, we have the documents from that time and some of the kind of writings from the previous pastors and some of the things they were talking about, some of the kind of desires they had, like things that they were connecting to in Scripture, all of that didn't seem to fit the name we had.
Oh wow!
So it was it was kind of like a matching of our current kind of culture and the
bridge
foundations.
to the past. Yeah, wow, that's
so
cool.
like all of that came together, and our old name just didn't fit that, and our new name was trying to express that. So
when people hear Northlight, what's the hope that they connect with?
Yeah, I think it's about, light is a positive thing. Like there's so many scriptures about the fact that Jesus said, like,
I am the light of the world. Yeah.
And then also he said, you are the light of the world, and we're supposed to be lights shining out in the darkness.
Right.
And that the image that we have is that of a lighthouse, which is really something that people use as a point of reference to obtain safety and direction and all that stuff.
Yeah,
so
true.
it's like, that's really what I feel like our church wants to be and is like a place where those who don't know Jesus can very visibly see in a landscape, a spiritual landscape, that the light of Jesus is shining through us and that people are attracted to that.
That's cool.
That's kind of,
And the north component, we're in the north.
We're in the north.
We're in the Yukon. That's the way it is. Yeah. No, that's cool. Okay, that's awesome. If people want to know more about your church, if they want to know more about you, social media, website, you want to just throw that out?
Well, www. I don't even have to say that anymore.
No. And that was only 2 W's. That wouldn't have worked.
www. Northlightchurch.ca.
Northlightchurch.ca.
And then the same on social media. So.
Okay. Cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Pastor Simon, Northlight Four Square Church in Whitehorse, Yukon Territory.
Okay.
We're
Thank
out.
you.